Hey, good morning, everybody. This
Good
is
morning.
Evan Lansbury. I want to thank everybody for joining, especially those, as Fred said, joining early from the West Coast. Thanks to Maytronics for facilitating this training as well. We'll give it a couple minutes, but I'll kick it off quickly here. So the goal for today is to provide you all with the latest troubleshooting and diagnostic best practices for Prowler. We want you and our field service teams to be equipped with the proper knowledge so we can service Prowlers efficiently and appropriately. So, our hope is that you'll see techniques to potentially, help you guys replace the correct part based on the situation while minimizing, how many parts are replaced during each repair. So yeah, again, I appreciate Maytronics hosting this and helping us out. The training will be recorded and we will be providing updated troubleshooting documents in the near future. Feel free to ask questions along the way, and thanks for your time and support. So anything from the Pentair Maytronics side before we get started?
Nope, we do love questions, however.
Great. And is that Jeff?
Yep.
Hey,
Good
Jeff,
morning.
good morning. Thanks again for helping us out with this.
Oh, no problem.
And just let me know if you need anything.
Yeah, and vice versa. If there's anything I can do, I'm happy to answer questions. If you want to type them in and somebody can read it off to me, that'll work.
Make it work.
So I want you guys, I want everybody here to be comfortable. I've met a few of you guys, but I am the product trainer, former technician, and happy to answer any questions to get you guys stronger. If you look in front, I laid out the only tools we really need to do any of this. I've got the multimeter or the stick tester, a crescent wrench, a Phillips head, and a phone. That simple two tools will get you through all of this. I'm going to be redundant in some of it because we're going to break down the videos into three pieces. So, we'll talk about the troubleshooting for each of the three, and you will see how much in common troubleshooting between them are. Of course, the exception is going to be the W, where we have the tech app to work with. So, any questions before I get started? So I'm going to start with the 910. It's as basic as you get. I want to have floor only. What you want to do is with all of the robots is turn them up on their side, power button, watch and listen. Is it rolling? Is there any bad noises? You should hear an impeller. You'll see the brushes roll one, stop, roll the other, stop, and the impeller kicks in. Then it'll stop completely. So the next step is starting the diagnosis. It's basically going to be a process of elimination. So when I test a power supply, we do have the stick testers, and I'm sure a lot of you do have one. Plug it in, turn it on, look for a green button. If you want to be a little more accurate, a voltmeter set to DC voltage on all of the power supplies. It's going to be holes 2 and 3. I'll never get a camera close enough to show you the numbers, but if you look closely, you'll see 2 and 3, and you should see 29 volts DC. Plus or minus on that is from 28.5 to 29.9. So we just tested that. We know the power supply has got good output. Taking apart any of the robots on these is very nice. If you're uncomfortable, take a picture. Make sure that when you put it back, you've got your seams all nice and clean. Basket out. Phillips head. 2 screws, here and here. The nice thing is the 4 screws that we're going to take out of this robot are all the same size, so you don't have to worry about mixing them up. Now, the one part I hope you will be able to see on camera is on all of the motors, there are 2 screws at the bottom. And only 2 screws that hold it in. Motor sliders over.
And you did say 29 volts DC between 2 and 3. Is that correct?
That is correct. Pulse 2 and 3 on the power supply, and that's across the board.
Excellent, thank you.
So now I've removed the motor. I'm going to put the shell aside. Free up the cable. Grab your channel locks or equivalent. If anybody is as nerdy as I am, it's 1 3/8. They are not an easy fixed wrench to find. Okay, so we've isolated the motor. Here's the cable. The other end of the test stick is a triangle with a tongue and groove. We plug it in. Plug this in. And I should see exactly the same thing, same result. Green there, or with the multimeter, just touching the 2 pins. (29 volts DC). Okay, no loss of signal. If there is a loss of power, replace the cable. Power supply good. Cable is good. You might have a bad motor. Inspect the impeller for any debris. Couple of trouble points on the 910. If a customer is saying it's popping wheelies, the quick answer is a short wheelie is how it turns. If it's going clear across the pool, we need to make sure nothing's obstructing the impeller, or you have a bad impeller motor and need to replace it. The other thing to check, if it is not moving, as these get some age, there is sometimes dirt and debris will get between the wheel and the bushing. And this, again, this goes across the board.
So Jeff, when you say across the board, are you referring to each one of the units?
Yeah, you're gonna see that I'm gonna be repeating myself a fair amount, only because I want to be able to let them edit this for 3 different modules that you can watch. But this troubleshooting really goes across the board between the 910, 920, and 930W. I don't want to sound a whole lot redundant, but it is important. The other thing, and this is also a problem for any of the robots, is sand and dirt and debris, especially if it's a salt pool, will get in here between here and the bushing. And if it's not right and it's wobbling, your drive motor comes through here, and this gear will be all chewed up. common to replace the wheel and bushing if they're throwing tracks as well. How am I doing so far? Oh, it's also the same size screw, so you can't mess that up.
Hey Jeff, Evan here. We see in our claims where service teams replace the wheel, bushing, and the motor, pretty consistently together. What process should they look for to whether or not to replace the motor as part of that? So yeah, I do
Actually,
see that.
What I found out this morning is we are now adding this one gear, which is what engages the wheel.
Yeah.
If this is all chewed up, you'll be able to order this through the system very soon. I just found out that this morning.
Okay.
So it's very simple.
Fantastic.
Yes, save us both a lot of time and money. You do need a finer point Phillips head for this one because this is going to be a different screw, but it's just simply getting in there, holding it, and I'm not going to show you guys how to unscrew and screw up a gear. I'm going to assume you can get that far if you're sitting here with us. Occasionally, you might also have to do it on the 910 only on the rear wheel and bushing. On the 20s and 30s that have a rear brush, it's not going to be as pronounced as with the 910. So that's really the basics to working on a 910. Any questions? I guess not.
You said that rear wheel on the 20 and 30 have a brush.
Yes.
Is that something that could be added to the 910?
No, sir. Different chassis altogether. We don't want that much weight on it. It's a very simple one. If there was the 917 at one time, but if you need that jump to have a back brush, go with the 920. The 910 is really just meant for above ground pools. Doesn't climb. It's only an hour and a half cycle. It's a 12-meter cable. It's the shortest cable that we offer on a robot.
I have a question.
Shoot.
We've been selling your product for a while, and the issue came up. I think what's happening is the unit will run for about 7 to 8 minutes and then shut off. I have it on its back on the floor on the counter, and it will run 7, 8 minutes and turn off. Now, prior to that, it was always a cord, a motor, or the control panel, one of the three that we would replace.
Right.
Now, and correct me if I'm wrong, we used to sell the 930. Now we're selling the 920 for a price point. And I think the cords or the motor or something's wrong because it used to be 3 prongs, and now with the 920, there's 2 prongs. So if you put a 3-prong cable on a 920, that shouldn't affect anything in my head.
Correct.
But I have a funny feeling it does. Now we've had, I'm going to say 10 of these float through our company, and it doesn't matter what I do, I can't make them run longer than 7 to 8 minutes.
In the pool or out of the pool?
Out of the pool.
Of course not. Of course not. Because of beach entry, we have a sensor that says, hey, I'm getting out of the water, turn off. Or try to find water. And if it doesn't find water in a certain amount of time, it will turn off outside the water. Otherwise, it's going to burn up. Now, the difference.
Go ahead.
I was going to say the difference between a 2-wire cable and a 3-wire cable is one small factor: communication. That's why the 930 can have Wi-Fi or Bluetooth, and the 920 does not. That's the only difference that the 3rd wire does, is communicate between your power supply and the motor.
And the new power supply, some of the lights, like you got the 3 functions.
Let's hold that one until we get to the 920. I really want to focus on the 910 questions and then put it back together and we can move to the other. And
Okay.
and please bring that back up again so I do address it.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions on the 910? Okay, so, you know, putting them back is just the opposite, nothing real fancy. Just don't over tighten the plastic cap. It's not, it's very difficult to replace. I snug it.
Jeff,
Yeah,
while you're
Yeah.
talking about that, there is or was an issue in the past with hot water in the cleaners. Down here, with all the heat we've been having, we're hitting 95, 96 degree water temperatures.
that is out of spec. If you look on the side of the box, there is some specs that tell you at that point it is too hot for a robot. Absolutely. Operating temperature for a robot is 43 to 93 degrees Fahrenheit. So much different doing this backwards and upside down.
So what happens at 95 degrees?
You'll start seeing it acting sluggish. It probably won't perform as well. You know, I've seen it especially with the opposite, with cold, where it just doesn't move. But it's going to have some operational issues in 93. Somebody here must be from Phoenix area or Texas.
Excuse me,
Yes,
Jeff.
we are.
Yeah.
That statement you made about the temperature being too hot, is that true? Is it fair to say that's true of all robotic cleaners or just
yeah.
this specific line?
I would say anything we make.
Okay.
I can't talk about the other manufacturers. I don't know them. There's enough to know about our stuff.
No, I get it. I just want to know if that was, again, if that was a blanket statement for all robotics.
It's anything that is a Dolphin. How about that?
Jeff, could you please explain
10-4.
again about the temperatures?
Sure.
Is that air temperature or water temperature?
That's water temperature, not air temperature. That is simply, most people do keep a thermometer in their pool. So it's a matter of pulling that out and seeing, if it says 98 degrees, that's why we say never test at your shop in a spa, because they run usually a little over 100 degrees. So yeah, it's
Michelle Stockbridge here. What's that temperature range again, please?
43 to 93 Fahrenheit.
Thank you.
Welcome.
And when the cleaner's outside of that range for temperature, it'll just simply stop, or will it give some sort of indication or light to indicate that it's...
It just won't act right. I can't tell you what exactly you'll see because it's probably going to be different from pool to pool. But though it might struggle climbing, it might struggle finishing a cycle. Fortunately, it's not a lot of time of the year unless you're in the sun belt. But it is just something I wanted to make you aware of.
Thank you.
And one more part on the 910 I'd like to go over that I get asked about fairly often. The 910 is the only one that has what we call a football float. And it is necessary because it's the drag and that wheelie that it pops that it is on here. And you see it's only about 6-8 inches from the top of the body. But how do I replace it? Screwdriver, seam, and there is a little fastener here to lock it in place. There's also notches in the styrofoam. Putting it back on is just the opposite of it's a slight squeeze.
Hey Jeff, what are your customer, or what are you folks doing with the response to our clients that are saying that you cannot operate above 96 degrees? What is your competition doing? Are they doing something different, or what's the rest of this?
I don't know what the competition does. I'll be honest with you. My training is just simply with our product to master our product. I can't add in their specs and what they do. I would imagine a few of you guys out there probably sell our competitors, and I don't know if they've addressed it, but if somebody else does, like Aquabot or whatever, wants to chime in, I honestly do not know. There I am, I'm back together. My seam is good here. 910 is done. Anything?
Just quick response to that. I just looked at a Polaris robotic pool cleaner manual, and theirs is 55 to 95 degrees F.
Okay. So we will actually be in a colder pool.
Yep.
Anything else on the 910 I can address?
I'm trying to find it.
I could not hear that question whatsoever. If you can, type it in and somebody can read it to me.
Silent, yes.
Okay, so now we go to the 920. And to follow up on the first question, this power supply has been used for many robots over the years. And all of them get the basic weekly timer. The 123 is a weekly timer. Every day, every other day, every third day. They ship like that. Now, the original 930W did use this power supply, and it would get the next button over, which is the quick clean mode. And then we had a robot that would take a delay mode. They will not work, even if they are programmed, because this is a 2-wire robot. And again, that's where the difference between that 2-wire and 3-wire comes in. A lot of customers think their power supply is defective because they do not get all the features, but in the manual, I do believe it says it is an option or optional on different robots. Does that help answer?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, all right. Same testing with the test stick that I broke. See if it still works. Positive, 2 and 3, 29 volts DC. So the next thing I'll do is turn that off, open up the robot. Again, we're looking at 4 screws in order to get access to the motor. All the same screws as well. Again, if you're not comfortable, take a picture. So this way you know what your seams are supposed to look like as you put it back together, so the customer sees it and everything looks right. Manifold. Same thing, gonna lift this up. There's a screw down here and a screw over here. That's what holds the motor in place. this out. I'm going to set the chassis aside so you guys can see everything nice and clear. I'm going to plug our test tool, and if you'll notice, there's always a tongue and a groove. Yep, this is the end I broke. Sorry about that. By the way, this is just a little $20, $25 multimeter, and it works great on our workbenches. 29.5, perfect in the range. Same thing with this chassis. If you need to access the wheels to check the front wheel and bushing, little tab on the inside will get your side plate out. These two tabs you'll see on the inside of the chassis. Now you have access to the wheel. It's always an easy thing to observe. You'll see scratches like crazy, and the gap between the wheel and the inner part of the wheel and the bushing will be quite wide, not tight like that. That's what you want to see. And if you have trouble taking it off, tech hint, Simple Green works wonders. And it's environmentally friendly, and it will not harm the plastic.
Could you remove also that brush just for the sake, the middle brush there, just to show?
Yeah. Now, this is where you will need to be careful because the screws are different size. Sorry, I'm going to turn it around so I can see so I don't do any damage. And in case you haven't done it, this is how easy it is to get the back brush off. So all 4 screws, here and here, here and here. This lifts up and out, and that comes through. Now you do have a definitive left and right here. You can't mix them up because it won't go back in place. And of course, you'd need to just simply remove that gear. Does that help? Whoever asked?
Yes. Yes. Thank you. Thank you for that. And
Okay, no problem.
The squeegee or the brush itself doesn't have a left and right, but once you put the things on the axle.
This mounting piece.
Down. Yeah, hold it.
Okay, so there is a left and right, but our left and right, we've never really determined. So the thing is, if it should go back on this easy. Okay, you saw how that went in, no problem. I'm going to take this gear off and show you the difference if you swap it. And it's something actually we do with our technicians here, is we do this and tell them to remount it. So which way does it go? Which way does it go? So you'll tell very quickly if you've got it on correctly, because it can look right, but if the chassis fights you, don't fight back. All right, so I got it right on the first try, but I'm going to flip them around to show you. You see, it looks right, but when I go to put it in, you see how it's fighting me? Flip them back. That's the difference when you have the left and right correct. Yes, no?
Hey, Jeff, I got a question while you're running those screws in there.
Absolutely.
When you check the power supply, at the power supply in 2 and 3,
yes, sir.
Is there a polarity on those two?
No. I mean, your multimeter, if it's the stick tester, it's correct. If it's the multimeter, it'll say negative 29 instead of just 29. But as long as you see a 29 there, if you want, simply move the black and red probes over. I just want to see that magic number.
Okay, my next question, and the last one, I think, is on the 910, you talked about troubleshooting when it does a wheelie.
Yes.
If it did it all the way across the pool, you said check the motor, but if it was a short distance, I didn't hear what you said was the problem.
If it's a short wheelie, it's how the robot turns. So we have a term for our 2 robots. There's a Clever Clean robot and a Power Stream robot. So the Clever Clean is just a very basic motor. How does it turn? Well, it has trouble. So it uses drag and inertia. So we've got the football float and the cable. If you notice, it's only on one side. It's not dead center. So when that impeller, when it knows internally it's time to turn, that impeller says, I need to stop for a minute. And as it does, the drive motor's still going. So as it's going through the water, it pops a wheelie. Well, the drag from that football float and the cable pulls that left side of it, and the right side is like, hey, I can turn. Then when the sensor inside knows that it's turned, the impeller kicks in, suction starts, and off it goes.
So that's not a problem, that's just a function.
Right. That is a proper function. I always use the phrase with some of the people I train that good wheelie, got short wheelie good, long wheelie bad. Because if you're doing a wheelie all the way across the pool, you're not turning, you're blocked. So either your impeller's got a lot of debris in it, or something else is going on with that motor and you need to inspect it. You won't see that problem with the 920s and 930s. So the 920s and the 930s work by channeling the water. If you notice, water doesn't come straight out the top of them like the old Prowler 820s and 830s, how it shot straight up. They realized that they could use the water as part of the propulsion. So all of them have the vent in the back. Well, somebody also decided if we put a vent on the sides, we can then have the motor move. We use a servo. You've probably heard of the servo motor. So the servo motor, excuse me while I make this a little easier. So the servo motor is straight up, left, or right. There's the black manifold that sits on top of this. So now I'm taking that water and I can channel it out the back of the robot, or I can push it out one side or the other, and just that little bit will help the robot turn left or right. It'll also help it as it's climbed the wall and gone to the water line to scrub along that water line. This is Power Stream, that's Clever Clean technology.
Jeff, we have a couple of questions here. I just want to make sure everybody's issues are being addressed, and you've touched on them a little bit. But,
okay.
Someone asked, will the internal impeller see lack of flow due to dirty filter? For example, it runs a few feet and shuts down.
Absolutely. Especially on the pleated filter, what we call the ultra fine. Dirt hides really well in those. And if the customer is not flushing it occasionally, it will show up and cause a problem. Absolutely. A lot of times during the troubleshooting process, I will ask, what filter is being used? Hey, do we have the fine filter that we can put in its place and see if it works? And in the really, really rare case, if the pool's clean enough, try it without a filter. See if that improves it. Very quick, easy test to be sure.
I have another question. I have a demo 920. Currently, it rolls forward 1 foot, rolls back about 5 feet, then stops for a few minutes, rolls again for a bit, and then stops. Repeats process, but 2 periods are longer than moving time. Is this a matter of taking apart and looking for wear? I mean, the periods of stop are longer than running.
Well, first question I will ask, is there an extension cord in use here? That's a common complaint I hear when there's an extension cord in play. So be sure if there's not one being used. Short of that, yeah, then you need to test the motor and see if it's a 930. I would say start using the Tech app, but for a 920, just look and see, is it responding? Listen to it. As you get used to working on these, you should get used to hearing how it's operating and say that doesn't sound right, or if it does sound right, then you know to move on to trying something else.
This is Wendy Corden. That was actually my question. It is not on an extension cord. It just has recently it sits much longer than it rolls. It will roll a little bit, really doesn't go up the walls. So I was just wondering if that's a wear thing or
it could be. What I would do if you've got the luxury of it is to pull the motor out of the robot. Make sure it's not binding anywhere. And just put it on your workbench and see, is it doing exactly the same thing? Then it might be time for a new motor. How old is it?
The motor actually had been replaced maybe a year ago. But I did loan it to a couple people, and then it sits in my pool a lot, but I don't know how they treated it when they had it, maybe.
Definitely worth looking into.
was just looking for a direction of where to look, but I'll look for where first.
Look for where, like I said, I would try it outside of the robot and see if that makes any difference. Sometimes as the dirt and sand that we were talking about gets into the robot. Sorry, I don't have great light right here, so that it might be binding. Make sure that, you know, listen to it. Does it sound, again, I hate to use that phrase, but does it sound right?
Okay, thank you. Check it out. I've never tried running it out of the water to check it out, so I'll do that.
All right, so all
Hey, Jeff,
is there
I
any
gotta-
weight limit?
What's that?
Is there any type of weight limit? Like if somebody's picking up a lot of sand or rocks or all that, is there a weight limit that it starts inhibiting the operation?
Yes.
I would, the only thing I could see it really kind of inhibiting is its ability to climb. I've never really run into it, into one that's run into that much sand and debris. Although if they've got a bad filter and it's dumped it in there, yeah, I could imagine that it would damage it, or not damage it, but slow it down. Probably fill up your filter, and then your filter's gonna say, you know, I can't move enough water, and it shuts down. Because it's thinking it's out of water or it can't move. The impellers have a sensor, and it knows at what speed it should be turning at. Because if you've ever sat at the bottom of the pool, you know there's pressure differences between the 3 foot and the 10 foot. Well, there's even a difference between 3 foot and out of water as to how fast that impeller will spin. They are smart enough to know the difference.
Hey, Jeff, how do you stop it from becoming a post turtle? I mean, once it finds that vortex cover, becomes a post turtle, you pull it off of it, it'll continue to run back and forth, and it'll love that vortex cover to the point that it'll get itself stuck, and I'm sure you know what a post turtle is. And then it does nothing, and you come out 3 hours later, and it's still sitting on top of that vortex cover.
Are you talking about drain? VGB
Say
drain?
it again?
Are we talking VGB drain covers?
That's correct.
Oh, the biggest thing is tell people, don't run your pool pump while you're running your Prowler. That's 101.
So,
because your pool pump's trying to pull down, we're trying to pull up. That pool pump's a lot stronger, and it's going to make you stick. If there's no suction from down there, it's going to go right up and over.
Jeff, I get it. So let me ask you this then. I've already isolated the main drains from being able to suck from that, but it still gets on that on the vortex cover and becomes a post turtle, and it can't work itself off. So you pull it off, and the analytics of what the timing is they have on this thing, it will go ahead and go back and forth, and it continues to stay right on top of that. It'll find its way back up on there. So I guess the bottom line is to get rid of the vortex cover. Is that what you're saying?
There are third-party solutions. There's a company that we have seen offer a solution to a lot of those called maindrainclipon.com. And honestly, between that and turning off the pool pump, it's not as big of an issue as it was many years ago. And again, really, a lot of time, and you know, if you ask people to take videos so you can see what's going on, turn off the pool pump because you can't see it breaking the water, you know, surface tension or anything. So they really should not be on at the same time. Again, we're talking about a 2-hour cycle. You can turn off the pool pump for 2 hours and turn it back on, especially if you have a Pentair and impeller system.
We have a few more questions in the chat. Okay. Does the power center also have heat limitations? If so, what are they?
We do recommend to either, if you have a 930, leave it on the caddy, get it out of the sunlight. You know, again, I know with Phoenix and an area like that, yeah, you really want it in the shaded area. You don't want direct heat on it. Just, you know, it gets hot just like your car will. And already they generate enough heat. That's why they're water resistant, not waterproof. Does that answer that question?
Yes, I got one for you. On
Shoot.
that tool that checks the voltage
Yeah,
that you, for the power center, I take it it's checking for 29 volts DC, correct?
yes.
So if it registers anything below that, the green light will not come on, correct?
Or it'll be really faint.
Because a lot of the service guys, they have those tools, but they don't necessarily be working on a Prowler with a voltmeter.
Right.
If you're recommending they should, okay, but
I'm offering solutions. What I want to do is say, you know, if you're at a workbench and you're working at them, I would invest in a multimeter. The voltmeter, whatever you want to call it. They will give you a far more accurate number. If you're out in the field.
Yeah, I was talking about warranty stations. A lot of them, you know, they're not on a workbench. They're on the side of a pool. So,
yeah,
okay.
that's when the stick
Just
tester
wanted to get
really comes in
clarification.
handy, because it's like, you know, you don't have to worry about, you know, breaking it or doing any real damage to it.
Okay.
Hey, Jeff, go back over with something that you had mentioned about what was water resistant and what is waterproof.
All of our power supplies are water resistant.
Thank you.
Because we take AC household current and turn it into 29 volts DC. That process generates heat, and we have to be able to vent it. So they are water resistant, splash proof, whatever you want to call it. But if it goes in a pool or if it gets rained on, it will find its way in.
Yeah, I can confirm that because a raccoon drug it in my pool.
Yeah. Raccoons are not warranty items.
How about the cable?
Yeah, no. I mean, that's not a manufacturing defect, but I like the humor.
All right, we have some more questions from the chat. Can you explain why extension cords should not or cannot be used? Is there a gauge of cord that can be used?
The problem is the flow of electricity. The more that you give it resistance, the less of it you get at the end of the cord. So that's why we recommend do not.
Yeah, I'll also add to that. We can only test to certain UL standards. And there's so many varieties of extension cords out there that we can't obviously test all of them. So that's why using an extension cord does make the warranty null and void.
What's next?
All right. Do we have any water chemistry recommendations which will increase the life? For example, total alkalinity or pH. Should it be taken out when you shock the pool?
Absolutely take it out when you shock the pool. If you look in your owner's manual, you will see the ratings for the chemicals. I'm going to see if it's on the other side of your boxes. It is not, but it is in the owner's manual.
So I've got one of the owner's manuals up here.
Okay.
So we don't, we say at all times your pool must be kept within the following levels: chlorine under 4 parts per million, pH between 7.0 and 7.8, and salt maximum 5,000 parts per million.
Next.
What would be the cause of the power supply's buttons beginning to bubble up? This can cause the buttons on power supplies to become inoperable.
Direct sunlight and extreme heat.
Okay. And another question. Why is there a weekly schedule option if you don't recommend leaving it in the pool?
Weekly being the operative word, not monthly. We understand people go on vacation. They want to leave their robot for a week and have it clean the pool. That's where that comes in. It's not meant to be used all day, every day, and just, taken out occasionally. It will shorten the life. I was talking to a dealer and he said the guy's cable was almost gummy. Well, he was leaving it in the pool 24/7 and adding chemicals as he wished. It's plastic and rubber. It will affect it. So we know that people want to keep it clean. Not everybody has the time to, always go outside and hit the power button. So they came up with the weekly timer as a convenience. Not all horrible. What else?
Those are the chat questions for now.
All right.
Hey Jeff, it's Mark in Apopka.
Hey Mark.
Hey, I've noticed I've on quite a bit of power supplies that I get back for evaluation. Of course, I think we talked about this before, but I think everybody needs to hear it. The customer, it's not working for the customer, but when I get it, it's working. Okay, so they've left it out. It's gotten wet.
Yep.
All they have to do is wait a day or two and it'll dry out and it'll be fine. I think we're replacing a lot of these power supplies that there's nothing wrong with it just because the customer mistreated it.
That, and also they are under the assumption that all of the buttons will work. That they expect the weekly, not just the weekly. Well, there's 2 more buttons. They're not lighting up. My power supply is defective.
Right.
And that's why I went over that with the 920, because it is something to address. But yes, water gets in and it's not working. And we have had the same issue when we've had power supplies that have had water damage here, and we've sent them to Israel by time for diagnosis. By the time they get to Israel, they have dried up and they work just fine. Right. So it is something to take note of.
Right. One other thing I want to mention, have you ever seen like power supplies where you hit the button once and the robot doesn't come on? Then you hit the button again and then it starts to work. I see it quite often.
Okay. On which one?
Just usually the 920.
The 920. Unless it is one of those ones like we talked about where it's been out in the sun and it's blistered a little bit and they just didn't press the button strong enough. That's the only thing I could think of. It's not something I see and hear a whole lot of.
And even when checking the communication cable with the multimeter, sometimes, I have the power, I'll put the cable on the power supply, turn it on, put the multimeter on the end of the cable, right, and I'll get 3 point something volts. I'll turn it off, turn it back on, and I'll get 29 point whatever volts.
Then I'd call it a bad power supply. If it's giving you that much grief, yeah, I'd call that a bad power supply.
Okay.
We have any others before I go to the 930?
Could you just briefly cover which buttons don't work again, just to put it in my notes, make sure I have
Absolutely. It. So on this one, and I'm going to take the robot off so it doesn't do it. Here's your power button. Here's your weekly timer. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Every day, every other day, or every third day, and then off. Then this button is a quick clean button. So for a 2-hour cycle or a 1-hour cycle.
Yeah, I don't know if you can get that any closer to.
Oh, absolutely.
It's just a black face.
Hang on. Let me come around the table. Thank you, Jason. How's this? Tell me.
Still a little difficult to see, but you can kind of make out the other buttons.
How about now?
So there's
your weekly timer.
So, that one's the only one that's going to work on the 920. You're going to have these two, the one in the middle and the one on the far right are not options for the 920. They're not features for the 920. So they will not be operable.
And it's not that it's defective.
Mm-hmm.
Are parts readily available?
For
Just in general, in the past, we've had trouble getting some replacement cords and the power supplies. We had to wait for quite a long time to get them.
well, at this time of the year, it's always a challenge.
Yeah, and in the past, I mean, we had availability issues due to COVID and everything that went on with that, but we did go a little bit light on parts, but we have ordered quite a bit of parts from Israel, and we're replenishing that pipeline. So we should not have that going forward. I won't say there won't be isolated issues, but we did specifically order heavy on parts for these products.
And we've been shipping out a lot of motors and power supplies over the last few months, Joe. So from what I can tell, we're pretty healthy right now. But if anyone recognizes specific shortages, please let us know.
And just FYI, some of the, we mentioned to check the gears before replacing the whole motor. We're in the process now of setting those gears up, those smaller pieces, setting those up in Pentair system so that they can be ordered, and we'll get some inventory running through Pentair system on that here soon. Thank you.
Jeff, one more question before you leave the 920. I had to jump off for a while, and you may have already covered this.
Not a problem.
The biggest complaint I've been hearing on the 920s, or the most common thing, is it will start, it will run for about a minute, and then just cut off.
Okay, so it's down to inspection and questions. You got to ask the customer, how long is their extension cord? And if you notice how I phrased it, I didn't ask them if they're using one. I'm asking them how long of one they're using. Because if you ask them if they're using one, you know the answer is going to be no. But if you say how long is it, you might just trick them and they'll tell you it's only 20 feet. The other thing is to make sure that, the motor is free, clear, it's moving, how does it sound? Do the basic tests that we did with the power supply and the cable.
Yes.
If it continues, it might be a motor issue.
Okay, but it's typically not a power supply issue.
Typically, no. Again, if you have the luxury of the multimeter, you can plug it in, put your pins in, and just watch it. Is it stable?
Right.
I have not heard of fluctuations on the power supplies. Anything is possible. I've recently run into an issue where it was the power coming out of the customer's home. It is something we often forget because we're so focused on fixing our product. Don't always dismiss the environment that the robot's in. That's why I said, how long's your extension cord? Are you using a TFI?
Great way to put it. Yeah.
It is, and it works. I know it sounds funny, but after 8 seasons, I find that question works.
Thank you.
Welcome.
So Jeff,
I want you guys stronger with this.
So Jeff, you mentioned that the cleaner ought not stay in the pool 24/7, 365.
Correct.
When it's removed out of the pool periodically, where do you want it stored at? Do you want it stored in what elements? You want it stored in a environmental safe area where the sun's not hitting it and it's in a cool area, or how do you want it stored?
Oh, if you can do that for me, I'd be a really happy camper. But, do you have a little, some people have little bungalows or whatever, or put it in the garage. Or, if you bought a 930, you've got a caddy, flip it upside down, put it on your caddy, cart it somewhere out of the sun, out of the elements.
Second question, thank you. You mentioned about the heat problem. If it gets too hot, what is damaged? What do we look for?
To be honest with you, we've not seen a huge issue with it because most people understand that it's plastic and metal, so they do take better care of it. I would imagine if it's, if it's the power supply and it's sitting in direct sunlight, yeah, you'll see that blistering. So would we. You know, sitting in the sun, we're going to blister. So think of it as, how would you want to be put up yourself? Somewhere in the shade, out of the elements. I would imagine you would probably see some tracks slip as a result. But again, I have not heard, even over all the years, a lot of complaints, especially on the heat. Now, this year is an exception, but most of the time I get these calls in the winter time, and it's somebody up in New England going, well, I'm trying to clean my pool, and it's like, it's February. And when you do a check on the temperature in the area that the client is calling about, with an ambient temperature of 22, I would imagine that water temperature is a little too cold for the robot. And there you would probably have shrinkage.
Hey, Jeff?
Yeah.
What's the possibility of putting, like, you know, most other things like a phone or even your car engine gives you some sort of light going off? Hey, it's getting too hot or it's getting too cold. Is it possible to put some kind of light on the power center to reflect that?
That would be an engineering question, not just some technician in Atlanta.
Okay.
Yeah, that is a good idea, and I can take that information to our engineering team in Israel. Thank you.
Kind of picking off of that, Jeff, if you don't mind me asking, I got a two-part question.
Shoot.
One, are you seeing an increase in failure rates with these kind of temperatures? And I had a chance to log into about 15 of my customers' systems, and everybody's ranged around 88 degrees except for those darker plasters. So if you are seeing an increase in failure rate, is it due to darker plasters only?
Not to my knowledge. In fact, I was talking with one of our repair centers in Phoenix, and he said, other than just being 115 degrees, you know, he's not seeing anything out of the ordinary.
Do you have a recommendation on how to get rid of the gummy hose?
Yeah. Replace it. Short of replacement, no. That gets back to keeping, you know, if you're treating your pool, get your robot out of there. Because I usually find the gummy ones are from people that have been leaving it in the pool and throwing in shock or whatever the latest, you know, algicide is, right. And it does not mix well with it.
All right, thank you.
What else?
Hey, Jeff, could
Yes.
you confirm the sequence of steps you recommend before replacing a motor? So we see a lot of motor replacements. We see a lot of starts and stops. But what are the steps, you know, because what you've shown is, you know, go to the power supply, go to the cable, and then the motor is out of the unit at that point. So, you know, once that motor's out, I imagine servicers are inclined to replace it. So like what, you know, out of water test and debris, what are those things we should check first?
First step is do an out of water self-test and listen to it. Observe it. Make sure your brush is rolling one direction. Now, I've been flipping these upside down. To be honest with you, when I am a technician, I just take, I used to use some cardboard cones, but what I would do is basically, and I'm sure you can see what I'm doing, is I prefer to do this.
We get
You
the
have to
camera
move the
shifted a little
camera.
bit.
Can you move the camera to the right to show the Prowler 930?
Yep.
Thanks.
This is the way I prefer to test them, because this is the way it sits in your pool. So we're going to do the 930 how I would do it. I would simply set it up there, right? Brush is not touching, tracks aren't touching, tracks are not touching anything, so it's not going to go off my workbench or off my pool side, and I'm just simply using the basket to isolate it. I'm going to turn it on, and I'm going to listen. Do I hear the impeller kick in? Do I see the tracks roll? hear the hum, that's my impeller. Now I've seen it's going back in the other direction, and the impeller's kicked in again. Then you'll notice it stops because it knows it's an out of water self-test. And excuse me, on the 930, that's actually on any robot, that's what I would do, to be honest with you. That's step number one. Then we start going through the process of testing the power supply. Now, you'll notice I got a red ring. That is because it is an out of water error. And you see how quickly that cleared away. That's just a simply nag error saying, hey, something went wrong, but it's not like something's really wrong. So the next step is, again, we go back to testing the power supply. $29, we're good to go. All right, turn that off. And again, it's the same 4 screws. By the way, if you do decide to use a screw gun, make sure it has the torque setting and you set it pretty low, because we're putting stainless steel screws in the plastic. It will strip it out very quickly. I'm going to do the same basic troubleshooting like I've done with every other robot. Seal on that one. Now, this is going to be a little bit different. We've got a 3-wire cable. Which 2 pins do I use? As I said, all of them have a tongue and groove, which match how it goes into the motor. It's going to be the 2 pins on the side of the groove. One there. One there. Oh, it does help if I plug it in. Yeah. And we're right back up to the full power. So what to do next? Well, we have one more advantage with the 930, and that's the Tech app. So I plug it back up. I can either put it back in the robot, or I can just do it like this, pull side, or on my workbench. So there's 2 ways to do this. Let me know when you can, hang on, let me get into my phone. And I'm firing up the Dolphin, oop, wrong one. The Dolphin Tech Plus app. Oh, I had to turn my phone into airplane mode because I know everybody be calling me today and interrupting us. So you'll see this screen. It's a little bit different from what you've seen. It has gone through some updates. So it's saying either use the QR code, which is on the lid. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, hang on. You can easily do it by just search nearby robots or QR code. So I'm going to do nearby robots. Let's say the QR codes are long gone. So I'm close enough, I can see 2 robots over in our repair center. Oop, 3. But I know I'm working on the, I just clicked there. Now I'm on this robot. You can see by serial number and all that. Has the screen. Can you see, everybody see this well enough? Jason, do you see this?
It's hard to make out the type, but I see robot is connected at the top. And then you've got down below, what's that say? Prowler 910. Does it say the serial number?
It says,
Under the image.
No, it was on the previous one.
Okay.
But as I say, okay, next.
That
Click here
you got serial
for
number.
parameters and errors. That's where you want to go. And this should have probably 1 or 2 out of water
If you
errors.
can pull the phone down slightly so we can see. Okay.
Okay.
So
And we'll do some new screen captures so you can see what the latest version looks like. But you can see here in blue, it says out of water, last cycle, out of water.
It's a little difficult.
It might
to read.
say servo overload. It might say underload. It might say, it could see DC voltage in, and it will tell you where to look for the problem. It'll also give you the parameters. How many hours are on the motor? Oh, I've never used it. And you see it's got 583 hours on it and go, really?
Yeah, I don't know, Jeff, if you could hold that pretty still for just a few seconds to where it will show up. Just to kind of give an indicate. I think you need to hold it closer to the.
I got a better idea. Not that one, but. There's always ways to make arrangements.
You have to move the camera up a little bit.
Yep, Beth's on that now.
Okay. I think it's too far away to.
Screen brightness. Maybe play with the screen brightness.
It's too far away still. I think you need to hold it up to the camera still. If it's possible. You move it in front of the camera.
That's what I'm working on.
Yeah, so just, I mean, you can see the error codes and then parameters. You can just read out some of the,
So you can see it says product serial number. It'll give you the motor unit, its serial number, how many hours and minutes are on it, what the last 10 errors are, if necessary, what its settings are, is, set for an hour, 2 hours, 2.5, whatever. It just.
Jeff, is there a way to take a snapshot on the phone and then we will later upload these images?
Of course.
Wonderful.
So this will be part of the follow-up to show you some of the screens if you're not already using it. But that's your biggest advantage with the 930 is now you've got another tool for your arsenal of helping to troubleshoot what's going on with it. Sorry, I could not get better, but we will follow up with some pictures and other things.
Hey,
Jeff.
Jeff,
Yes.
hey, just because it has an error doesn't mean anything's wrong, correct? Like a
Correct.
overload?
Correct. I mean, if you just see out of water, if you've been doing bench tests with it, that's one thing. But if you see an out of water when it's in the water, then it's something. But you might see like drive overload, drive underload. You might see DC voltage in.
So Jeff, on that app, on that tech app,
Yeah.
when it gives you a specific error, does it give you direction?
Yes. And we will also provide you with a list of if it, this error code means this, and this is the action for it. That will be made available as well.
Jeff, this is Lamont in Phoenix. What's the name of that app again?
It's the Dolphin Tech Plus app. And I believe that there is a document that shows what credentials to use for it. Please do not change the password because it will affect everyone.
Thank you.
Is it my Dolphin Tech Plus app or is it Dolphin Tech Plus app?
Dolphin Tech Plus. If you see the word my, it's a consumer app. What else?
Is that an app that any customer can download?
No, that is strictly for us technicians.
Yeah, it's not something that we publish out there to customers.
Right.
I mean, customers can stumble upon it, obviously, in the app stores and all that, but it's not something that we go out and publish.
And they get a fair amount of information from, with the Dolphins, they have information available to them. But even with the home, trying to remember the name of your home app, they will glean a fair amount of information to know if it's something that is just a nag or something that's a major issue.
Hey, Jason.
Just if, okay.
Yeah,
I was going to
sounds
mention
good.
about the Prowler Tech app.
That's where I was going, so I'll let you go first.
Okay, so we developed a Prowler Tech app for the 930. Now, this is not the 930W, but the 930. So the 930W is the Wi-Fi version of the 930. So the Pentair Tech app is only usable with the 930 non-Wi-Fi version. And doing some research. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
It also uses the power supply like the 920, which is Bluetooth.
Correct. So it's a Bluetooth connection, but the Prowler Tech app is not designed for the 930W, which is why we opened up the Dolphin Tech Plus app.
Yeah,
Did you have further
no,
questions?
that was, yeah, it's exactly what I wanted to hit on with the group is the fact that the Prowler Tech app currently not compatible with the 930W, but we'll take that away and see if we can get that worked on. And then in the meantime, Jason, I mean, are we saying it's okay and we encourage Pentair reps to use the Dolphin Tech Plus app?
Absolutely. That document that I sent you, we need to update it slightly because the ability to search by serial number is no longer there. It only has the ability to search nearby robots. So we need to tweak that document that I sent you that also has the credentials for logging into the Dolphin Tech Plus app. We'll need to update that just slightly before we issue it to the field.
All right.
It will also work with the QR code on the power supply, on the robot, and on the box.
And the QR code this one got a QR code under the lid, Jeff?
Yep.
The 930W?
Yep. So you'll see, if you look at the camera, there's a QR code here. There's a QR code here. And there's a QR code here.
Yeah, and also want to touch on this too is there's two different serial numbers. So there's a sticker on this robot. Jeff, I don't know if you can hold that 930W up a little closer to the camera to show the difference between Maytronics sticker and the Pentair sticker. So under the My Dolphin, since we have to use the My Dolphin Plus or the Dolphin Tech Plus app, we would need, the only thing that's being referenced in there is the Maytronics serial number, which is on that larger white sticker that Jeff circled right there. Yep. And then Pentair's sticker information is that one right there. So just note that the Pentair serial number will always be longer than the Maytronics serial number. So you would just, when you do sync up with it via the app, you will see the Dolphin serial number, the Maytronics serial number, and not the Pentair serial number. So just FYI on that.
Any more questions on the 930 while it is apart, or shall I put it back together? I mean, if you notice, it's just like the 920. Okay, I'll put it back. Any questions typed in?
Yes, we do have another one in the chat. Is there a yearly preventative maintenance that can be done, such as replacing gaskets, O-rings, etc.?
The motors, there is no replacement parts for the motor internally. They may show up on a document, but there is no access to replace anything O-ring wise there. What we recommend is a good flush with clean water from a hose, clean the filters, and really just that alone is a milestone for most customers. If they'll do that, it should be fine.
Where's the login credentials available?
In here.
Could you please repeat that?
Where is the document for login credentials available?
We're going to get that. Go ahead, Evan.
Yeah, I'll get that distributed to you guys. As Jason is going to get us an updated version that has those credentials, and I'll get that out to everyone as soon as possible.
And I just want to reiterate too, please don't change the credentials. Yeah, I mean, anytime you hit forgot password or something like that, it's going to come to my email address, and I'll have to update the password. So please don't change the credentials on it.
And don't share it with a consumer.
Another question in the chat. What are the various lights flashing on the power supply telling us?
Okay, you've got two lights. You've got your power button, which when it's ready to go is blue. If it is blinking, it is set for a weekly timer, which by default is every other day. If it's red, you've got a problem. If you see it going through multicolors, usually in the middle of the night, that means it's doing a software update.
Can you repeat that last sentence?
Sure. So if it is doing a red, green, blue, red, green, blue, red, green, blue, you'll usually see it about 2 in the morning, and that means it is doing a data transfer and software update.
So if they've had their unit unplugged, overnight, when they plug it in, if there's a software update available, is it going to go to the flashy lights during that time,
Yes.
right when they plug it
Yes.
in?
Yes. And unless it is stuck on one color, the rotating color is fine. And it doesn't even, I mean, it's very quick. It's not a long drawn out process.
Would removing power during that update cause the power supply to brick?
I don't think so. I think it'll just pick back up when you plug it back in. I've not heard of anybody bricking.
So not to confuse us a little bit, but on the 920, if you press the power light and it all just kind of blinks blue flat and then it all flashes and all turns off, is that just a bad power supply?
Well, then we have to do a little testing. The first thing I recommend when you see something like that is disconnect the robot from the power supply, plug it in, and turn it back on. If it is continuing, then yes, it is a problem with the power supply. If it does not, then we need to look at the cable or the motor possibly having water penetration. Well, no parts left over.
Hey, Jeff, how often do you see corrosion at the power supply?
In the power supply,
Yeah.
it's usually only happens when it's gotten rained on, or the dog dragged it in the pool. As far if it's maintained properly, not seeing that as an issue. Usually it's when it's been caught in water and all that. Otherwise, the vents on it are pretty good, but it does have to have the vents. But they have engineered it where it's as resistant as possible because Jason can probably tell you the number, but there is a water resistance number.
You mean the IP?
Yes, that's it.
If you look on the back of the power supply.
So this one,
64.
Supposed to be 50.
IP 54 on this one. IP 54.
Yeah, all of them are IP 54.
Okay, so that is an international standard that it is tested for. That's your basic breakdown of your three models. And I'm sure you see that there is a lot of similarity between them, but enough to make them different and interesting.
Hey, Jeff?
Yeah.
Or Jason, can you, just for a frame of reference, IP54 really doesn't mean anything to me. Like
it's
1 to 100, 100 being best, and you know what I'm saying?
It just means water resistant instead of waterproof.
Okay, but I guess 54 again doesn't really have any value to me. I mean, is compared to.
I added
Do a
in the
Google
chat.
search of IPX standards, and you'll be able to find a chart that'll give you what resistance or what level of water resistance it is for that number.
Okay.
I just added the rating explanation, like a short explanation on the chat, so you can read it.
All right, what else can I answer for you fine folks? Anything in the chat?
Hey, Jeff, if there's no lights on the power supply, is there a hard reset for the power supply?
Unfortunately, no. If it doesn't light up and you're plugged in, the only thing you can do is just make sure by trying another outlet, make sure the GFIC did not trip. But if it's dead as a doornail, that's an indication you've got a bad power supply. Again, it's really just a process of elimination between the three mains and then a couple of ancillary issues that each one has, but excuse me. What else, folks? Everybody comfortable, a lot more comfortable with the robots now than this morning?
I got another question in chat. How should the cord swivel work?
Freely. I mean, if you
Dave,
look.
Dave, can you elaborate on that question, please? Dave Horner.
So ask me the question more specific.
So he has a swivel that's binding. So what is the resolution for that? Is it replace cable?
Unplug it there and separate it and see if there's just some dirt in the bottom and you can free it up. Otherwise, it's going to simply be replacing the cable. Unfortunately, you cannot replace just the swivel. It is the entire cable. It gets back to that sand and dirt that gets in here to the wheels and the bushings. If it does get in here and it can't do this,
yeah,
then you know, if you folks will hold on, I'll go get something. Actually, probably can I do it with this?
Thank you. I think.
Now, let me go get a pair of needle nose and I'll show you how to take it apart and what to look for.
Okay, perfect.
Talk amongst yourselves.
Hey, since everybody's quiet and we're waiting on needle nose, can any TSMs or anybody out there answer me where we're successful selling a lot of these?
We sell a little bit out here in Arizona, Daryl.
We mainly see our sales with the Prowlers connected to new pool sales in our area.
Also heard a lot of guys pushing the service, pool service folks. They drop it in for a couple hours, move to their next pool, come back. Their pool's been swept.
Oklahoma and Arkansas sell a whole lot of 920s.
Majority of sales, at least for us, we see kind of Midwest and Northeast and making their way in the Sun Belt on the East Coast pretty well. So.
All right.
Thank you.
I've separated the swivel just simply using a pair of needle nose. There are some custom tools. Always check, if you are checking, make sure your pins, whether it's 2 or 3, are all the same length. Your binding at the end, if that doesn't clear the debris, or if there's moisture in it, it's replacement time. But there is some play so that you can do that. Because what I should be able to do is do this. And if you notice, my cable is not kinking, and I am slowly but surely putting that back together. Now, you do want a good tight seal to that because you don't want water penetration, but this has been improved greatly. We now have 2 O-rings to slow down any water penetration, and it has, in the past 4 years, it has not been near the issue it was 8 years ago. And then again, like I said, that'll move. So you can make sure that that's nice and free and clear and swiveling.
And
Is there
Jeff,
a
I don't know if
recommended?
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Jess. Is there a recommended annual maintenance to lubricate those O-rings?
No. Shouldn't be in, I mean, unless you absolutely have to, you shouldn't be in a swivel. And now we do use a product called Molly Coat with a K that we will put on the threads of a motor as we put that cap on, but it's not a necessity. It's like, I don't know if any of you folks worked on the old 820s and 830s where it didn't have the cap, but it had that cork style connection for the top of the motor. And there we would put it in the thread so that there would be no water penetration there.
If you take it apart, should you replace these swivel O-rings?
No, they're not even available. If you don't like the way they look, replace the cable.
Hey, Jeff, what would cause one of the pins to be longer than the other two?
I wish I knew that.
Because I did have one return that I found that was the issue.
I honestly, I don't have an honest answer for that. I've seen it enough myself, but I don't know what causes it.
I mean, it's probably just corrosion, correct?
It could be corrosion. It could be power fluctuations. You know, it could be water penetration at the terminal that's traveled up. I honestly don't know. It could be just age, but I'm simply speculating. That's all that is pure speculation.
Okay.
What else, folks?
I have a quick question, probably for Evan, I would imagine. Sorry, I had another meeting this morning, so I kind of jumped on late, so forgive me if you covered this. But as far as the 930W is concerned, one question I get from dealers all the time is there a guide for replacing the motor and pairing a new motor, and also for the power supply? Do we have any updated handy guides that I can distribute to some of my service centers?
Yeah, we're working on finalizing revised content for that. So not quite yet, but we'll make sure that's part of a follow-up to this.
Thank you, Evan.
Yeah, appreciate it.
All right, well.
Okay, here's another question. I had a cord swell up in the motor and couldn't remove the cord. Would you contribute that to a leaking swivel?
No, I contributed to water penetration at the terminal of the motor. So the cap or whatever, it got past the cap and into the terminal, and where that meets, it sits in the water and it rusts together. That's why I wear an apron, because when you go and it goes all over you, we learned to wear aprons. I've trashed enough shirt and pants doing just that. Years past.
I thought maybe you were cooking ribs back there too.
Shh. Don't give away all my secrets. And there's some chicken on the side too, but we won't go down that road. Plus it covers up my fat belly. But if you also notice,
That's very nice.
I think I'm good with this. Evan, do you have anything we need to double click on, or?
I'm good. I want to thank Maytronics. Thanks for putting this together. It's very helpful. I hope all of our field reps found it helpful as well. You know, we want to drive towards replacing exactly the component that needs to be replaced and reduce whole good replacements. So, you know, I hope this helps you guys work with our servicers to reduce warranty. We will have follow-ups for sure we'll have some documentation. If you need diagnostic sticks, they should be available to order in Salesforce or contact Carla. I'll get the stuff distributed for the Dolphin Tech Plus app. I'll also, as soon as we get the replacement motor gear released, it's not out there yet, but as soon as we get that released, we'll send out a notification to the field, let you know that it's available. But thanks for attending. I appreciate everybody's contributions today.
I love the questions. Thank you, everybody. Because I know what I know, but I want to know what you don't know and want to know.